So our selection as the fifth and final worst thing about being a runner is
running. A beautiful activity and something we've been at for over 50 years between us.
There's so many wonderful things about running in terms of your physical and mental health. However, there are things about running which can really, as they say, grind your gears.
So in this video, we're going to take you through 5 things that we don't like about running.
But don't worry, we're also going to come up with several solutions that address those 5 negative aspects of running.
So if you do find something that you like in this video, please give us a thumbs up.
And if you enjoy our content as you're watching through, please consider hitting that subscribe button and join our growing army of subscribers. So the first potentially negative aspect of being a runner today is the sheer cost of the sport, which is increasing all the time. Yes, we live in an era where many people are finding less and less disposable income in their pockets at the end of the week or the end of the month, and yet the costs of running, or the potential costs of running, are getting higher and higher. So I'm just going to go through some of those potential running costs now and give you solutions as to how you might address them. So one of the costs that Dawn and I have noticed has rocketed in the last 20 years that we've been running is that of race entries. During the early 2000s, we had a situation where most races were organised by running clubs and were provided at cost price to the entrant. So you'd pay £4, £5, £6 to enter a local 10k, or maybe £12 for a local half marathon. The big expense of the year might be if you enter the London Marathon or Great North Run. However, due to the rise of risk assessment culture in many areas, clubs now find it very difficult to put on races that might have to take place on closed circuit. So we've seen the rise of the running events company, and good luck to them. Many events are fantastic and people have to earn a living, and they can deal with economies of scale, such as putting on big races in cities and towns and dealing with road closures and other associated costs. But we've just entered 7 or 8 races for the end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024, and it is eye-watering. We are several £100s, well, not out of pocket, but we've had to take out of our pockets several £100s in order to enter them. So what can you do if your budget does not extend to these very expensive races that you might see advertised? Well, the first and obvious thing, and I'm in a place now where one takes place every Saturday morning, is to go and do parkrun. It's absolutely free. All you need is a barcode and yourself in the park at 9 AM in England, or 9:30 in Scotland and Ireland, I believe, 9 o'clock in Wales, and you can have a free timed 5k run, which you can turn into a race if you so wish. Another way of finding races relatively cheaply is to become part of a running club. The running club we belong to organises a winter handicap race 7 or 8 times a year, I believe. And there are also very cheap club events such as the cross-country series some club members are currently taking part in. That's £8, I believe, for 4 races. So there are cheap races out there if you know where to look and you know who to speak to. Next big running cost, running shoes, something that's been a topic of controversy over the last 4 or 5 years in running. 20 years ago, I maybe had 2 or 3 pairs of shoes. I had a training pair, a racing pair, and a spare old pair. Now we are encouraged or advised to build shoe rotations. It's something I've done myself. You may have seen a video a few weeks ago about me agonising over which of 5 pairs of trainers to wear for the Yorkshire Marathon. These trainers can cost up to £250 new, and so you can be several £1,000s out of pocket if every time you click onto a YouTube shoe review and you think, I can see a role for that shoe in my rotation. So a few tips to keep that cost down. Firstly, look on auction sites. When we want to buy a pair of shoes, we might look on eBay, Vinted, other sites are available, and you can often find shoes that maybe people have bought, worn once or twice, not really got on with, might have 10 miles in them, and you can get them at half the recommended retail price. So that's one way to save money on shoes. Also, if you find a pair of shoes you really like and they're on a good offer, is to maybe stock up on a few pairs. The Puma Deviate Nitro Elite were down from £170 to £85 a few months ago, and I bought several pairs. I think I bought 5, but I use them for many of my daily runs, and that in the long term will save me money rather than buying the latest shoe. Which leads me on to the next way in which to save money on running shoes is you don't always have to buy the latest model. It is tempting when you see a shoe review of a shiny new shoe straight off the shelf to think, I want that, I want the latest colorway, the latest model, the latest this, the latest that. But we never actually buy the latest edition of a shoe. We buy the ones from last year or the year before, which are typically discounted to maybe 50% or more of their original retail price. You get more shoes for your buck, or pound, or euro, or whatever currency you deal in your country.
Other things you can spend money on is kit and, of course, a nice sports watch.
So some kit is necessary. You don't want to be going out in the freezing cold in thin layers and catch your death. Because we run a lot, we have lots of kit. We've got jackets for different occasions, but it may be if you don't run as much and it's a hobby you indulge in 2 or 3 times a week, you don't always need to buy the most expensive latest bit of gear.
So our sports watches probably cost about £200 or just under, but you can get ones that actually cost up to about £1,000.
I'd think about whether you need them or not. If you're going to be running ultras through the night and need all the navigation features and funky stuff, by all means invest in it. But we know runners who could really get away without wearing a sports watch. They don't track the numbers that much. They're not interested in Strava. They're just interested in knowing how long they've been out for a run and generally how far. So you can save money by not thinking I have to have this watch or that piece of kit. Buy what is necessary for your running. So if you're enjoying this video and getting a few tips that might help your running, please consider giving us a like. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing. We post up running content 2 or 3 times a week to keep you educated, informed and entertained.
So another thing that we don't like about running is when you have to go and run in the winter darkness.
That's right, if you work regular hours like Dawn does, often you don't get to see any daylight that you can run in between the hours of sort of 8 o'clock and 5 o'clock. So off we are tonight in the dark for a 1-hour run.
And have you ever wondered why you actually feel like you're running faster than your data actually tells you you're running?
No, I have never wondered that, but I feel you're about to tell me.
So the reason is, guys, that in the dark, because the visual stimulus is removed from us in terms of the, what is it? I can't remember.
Dawn was about to tell us, but I'll tell you anyway. I think it's because the visual stimuli going into your eyes are slightly different and your perception changes. But don't worry if your data tells you that you're running slower than normal. It's all about visual perception, but it's one of the things that some runners don't like about running in the dark.
Me included. So one of the other things that I don't like about running in the dark is the trip hazard. Yeah. So I've actually had quite a nasty fall in the dark.
So there was a metal ring from a wheel hub, wasn't there?
That's right. So it come off a car. Obviously, it was lying on the pavement. I didn't see it. I caught my foot in it, and I went flying, landing half on the pavement, half on the road.
So running in the dark, you're slower than you think you should be, and there are potential trip hazards, even in lit areas. Another thing about running in the dark, we're about to run on our lovely Transpennine Trail, which we've shared with you many times on this channel. In the day you can see all sorts of sights, railway architecture, nature. Basically in the dark you see whatever this light will shine in front of you, so you can actually see there isn't any impediments en route.
Now some people might like that because they like to see the shadows and different things in the dark, but for me I want to see the beautiful views that open up in front of me.
We've actually got some club mates, haven't we, off-road runners who like going out in the dark on the moors out there.
However, I think if you run in the dark long enough, your eyes actually adjust to it and you actually get to be able to see quite a lot. It's just that we're so used to running in daylight and then we put head torches on.
So what can we do about having to run in the dark? We cannot produce daylight, we are not God. But first thing we can do is we can wear head torches which help light the path in front of us and may have helped Dawn that evening where she tripped over. The next thing we can do is...
well, we can wear high vis, that allows other people to see us in the dark, and obviously, although it won't prevent me from falling, it will actually prevent anybody from knocking into us.
So we're off on the Transpennine Trail today.
So one of the things that we tend to do when it's dark is stick into well-lit areas.
However, the town we live in is quite small and there aren't that many lit streets. You end up on very limited routes. So we are going out on the TPT this evening. It is lit for a little bit down there, but after that we're getting these head torches on. And another thing you can do to help running in the dark and help pass the time of day, because there's not very much to look at, is to run with friends. And we are off to find a friend.
Running in the dark is never going to be our favourite time to run. However,
Having a plan and relying on good habits rather than intrinsic motivation is what gets us out on a night like this. And we're very pleased to report we managed a full hour and we got that solid run in that will help our training in the long run. Running's a beautiful thing and we consider ourselves lifelong runners, but one disadvantage of being a lifelong runner is eventually, as you get older, your times will slow.
and of course, your time's declining isn't all about age, it's mostly about how long you've been running. So if you're a runner who's come in at the age of 50, you're not going to be declining at 55. But if you've been running since you're in your 20s or 30s, then by the time you get to 55, you're obviously not going to be running the times you were running in your 30s.
Experience of our own running and several runners we've observed would suggest that the sweet spot for running is to get to near a peak after about 4 or 5 years. You can maintain that for up to 10 years, and after 10 years of running decent miles and competitive races, you will probably start to see a decline. So, sad news there, but not totally, because we're going to go through some things you can do to help reframe that into a positive.
You may have heard us mention age grading in the past. This is something I use a lot now that I'm in the years where I'm no longer achieving PBs.
So age grading works by comparing the times you run at your current age and extrapolating equivalent times you would have run at a younger age. So for example, Dawn's recent marathon, which was a 3:31, you can extrapolate for a senior athlete would have been somewhere in the high 240s. So you can be really pleased with your performance. I think I ran faster today than I did at my peak based on that age grading time. It's fun. Another age-based way you can remain competitive is by aiming to run PBs within each 5-year age band from 35 upwards. So I recently hit a PB for the veteran 50 category for me, between 50 and 54. I've hit 5k PBs in that category and 10k PBs this year, so that's pleasing, even though I'm way off the times I was running in my 30s.
So age bests, yay!
So those two ways are remaining competitive against your old self or against a set of abstract numbers. But Dawn has been working on another way of remaining competitive into the veteran categories.
So yes, I've competed in the England Masters Championships over the distance of 10k and half marathon. I've been fortunate enough to finish in particular races, which were the championship races, in the top 3 for my age group.
So achieving an England best on 3 occasions, we've actually found this year has been one of the most joyous for running we've had for a while, because we've reframed our goals and become competitive against our old selves and against other veteran runners.
Aging is inevitable. How we deal with it is down to us.
So deal with it in a positive and proactive manner.
So the fourth thing that we don't like about running is picking up niggles and injuries. I currently have a niggle. Just saved my run. As runners, it's inevitable at some point in our running we're going to pick up a niggle or a full-blown injury. If you have a niggle, you may be able to continue running like I'm doing at the moment. However, if you have a full-blown injury, then you may not be able to run at all. So yes, anybody who's picked up an injury know that you have to go through a cycle. You normally start off with denial that you've got something wrong, and then you feel a bit angry, and finally you get to the acceptance stage. It's far easier for you if you get to the acceptance stage earlier, because then you can do something about the injury. For myself, for years I picked up lots of injuries and I was very, very bad at accepting that I had an injury, and so I continued to run on it. And when you continue to run on an injury, you're in for a longer period of being out of running and then having to rebuild that fitness.
So I've learnt over the years, through bitter experience, there are many things you can do to avoid getting injured. The first one is to engage in some strength and conditioning work, something I neglected for far too long, but now it's a regular part of my exercise regime for the week, 3 times a week. You can also do mobility exercises to avoid injuries, and you can make sure that you get your post-run routine right by eating and drinking the right things, by getting plenty of rest, by getting good sleep. All these things minimise the risk of those injuries that, as Dawn says, are so frustrating as runners. So a couple more tips here to help avoid injuries. One, periodise your training. That means plan in down periods in your training year, perhaps after a major race, so you don't avoid going into a new period of training without having properly recovered from the effort of that big race.
Another thing is to make sure you warm up before every run and do a set of activation exercises. This is particularly important if you're going to be doing some speed work or a race, but it wouldn't hurt you missing the first or reducing your run by about 5 minutes and get those activation exercises in on every run.
That's right, two of the injuries I had earlier in the year were down to not following that basic and simple piece of advice. I went straight into a session without adequate warm-up because I was pushed for time. Result, injury and sad John. But even with the best will in the world, you will get injured. So how do we cope with injuries as a runner? First and obvious and sensible thing to do is to do some aerobic cross training. I invested in a watt bike the year before last because of persistent injuries, and can enjoy doing 1 hour 30 bike rides, which replicates some of the aerobic benefits of running.
So personally, I've enjoyed swimming and using the rowing machine in the gym when I've been injured. There's also loads of other machines you can use that'll work your aerobic engine, so you'll still be gaining a fitness. Depending on how long you're out, obviously, it'll be easier to come back to the running.
You can also use your time out injured proactively to work on the areas that possibly made you injured in the first place, doing extra strength and conditioning exercises that will help alleviate injury in the future. You may seek advice from a professional physiotherapist or chiropractor. They can do an assessment of your strengths and weaknesses and give you specific exercises to train your weak points. That's another positive thing to do when you're injured. Seek professional advice.
So injuries, they're not nice. Stay positive, get a plan and do what you can. That's what I've done this week, and I'm out here today, and I can happily say I'm running with a 0 pain.
So our selection as the fifth and final worst thing about being a runner is the need to go. And by that I don't mean in a Monty Python nudge nudge wink wink sense either.
Your wife, does she go? Hey, how do I mean?
So if you've been running for any length of time, you'll have probably experienced when you are outside the need to empty your bladder and or bells. So two possible locations for this eventuality: outside in the countryside like where I am now, or running through an urban area. And two main possible contexts: you're on a general training run like I am now, or you are in some sort of organised event or race when that need comes over you. So if the need comes over you on a run in the countryside like now, take the appropriate materials, if you know what I mean, and act accordingly with dignity and respect, if you know what I mean. So if the need comes over you when you're out on a general run in a built-up area, sadly we are past the heyday of the Great Victorian Public Toilet, a subject incidentally I touched on in one of my recent books. But there are often establishments where toilets are available, which I don't need to go into detail about here. I'm sure you can work it out for yourselves. So we then come on to the need for a toilet as you approach a public event. I'm now standing at the start of our local parkrun. Lovely scenery, but as you can see, there are no toilets around dedicated to this particular showground. So you'll need to check what the availability is of toilets when you get to parkrun. You might need to plan en route if you're being a tourist and going to a different part of the country. Are there places to stop en route? And that's parkrun, but when you come to doing an organised road race, it can become more problematic. I don't think I've ever done a London Marathon, and I've done about 8, I think, where I didn't experience some physical discomfort on the way to the start of the marathon and milling around in the start area. You have to use public conveniences, so again, it's a case of planning ahead, knowing what your needs are, reading your own interoception. But there we go. So the fifth and final worst thing about running in our view is a need to go to the toilet when it's not convenient, or when there are no conveniences, like here.
We hope you've enjoyed this video.
And if you have, please give it a like, and please consider hitting that subscribe button. We bring you regular running content to keep you amused and entertained during the week. And if you've enjoyed this video, please have a rummage through some of our other training videos I'll put up here, which look at various aspects of getting older as a runner and dealing with the various issues running can bring you.
Until next time, keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on.